Louder, louder, we can do it. Let's get a cheer, let's get a chant. There's not enough of you to do a wave right now, but I will make you do that later. Do not be concerned on that. Has everyone enjoyed the morning so far? Yes. Well, we have another amazing speaker for you right now coming up to this stage. Spending some time with her backstage, an incredibly kind and amazing person that's so accomplished. It's Nika Kabiri, the Vice President at Strategic Insights at Lux Insights. I'm just going to come up in here and sort of dive further into that legal trends report and setting a client experience and setting expectations properly. She's going to do an amazing job. So let's give her a warm round of applause to really welcome her to this stage. So without further ado, Nika Kabiri.
Thanks. Hi. I'd like to start my talk by asking you all, how many of you have ever had this thought in the course of your legal practice? Clients, what the F are they thinking, right? I'd be surprised if I ever come across a lawyer, talk to a lawyer who hasn't had this thought at one point or another. What I do for a living is consumer research, market research. I spend a lot of time talking to consumers of legal issues. I've done this for quite a while now. And I also do a lot of interviewing and research of lawyers, which means I get a lot of information from lawyers about a lot of different topics. Invariably, no matter what my conversations with them are about, they always talk about that client or those clients that have changed sometimes the way they do their practice because they suck so bad. Like, for instance, how many of you have had a client that comes to your office and already knows everything, right? They know the law because they watched the Law and Order Marathon last weekend. They know how to Google. So they already know it all, right? What about that client that comes to your office completely an emotional wreck every single time? Either crying hysterically about how life's not fair, or pissed off because they can't get what they want, right? Or the client that lies, maybe, doesn't tell you the whole truth until it's too late, kind of doesn't really know how to help himself out. And then there's always the client, of course, who can't help but get in their own way. So for instance, here's a story. Guy is in court. He wants to delay his hearing, so he literally purposefully poops his pants. Another guy is being charged with making harassing phone calls, calls the judge of the case, and leaves 87 voice messages with her over the course of a weekend. And then there's the choice client that we all would love to have who's charged with domestic violence, shows up in court with a T-shirt that says, "I have the dick, so I make the rules." These are real people, folks, and these are some of the people that come to your office every day, and they can really, really suck. But the truth is that even though clients give lawyers so many what the F moments, you still need them to like you. And the reason why you need these clients, no matter how horrible or frustrating or vexing or irritating they are, the reason why you need them to like you is because word of mouth referrals are important. George talked about this, Jack talked about this. Ensuring that you get positive referrals is a real cornerstone of your business. 6 in 10 clients are likely to be, have sought you out through a friend or family referral. Now, a lot of people talk about online reviews a lot, and they are becoming increasingly important. Referrals come in two ways. They're either volunteered, as in an online review. Someone says, "Oh, I had a great experience," or "I had a crappy experience, and so I'm going to go out, I'm going to tell the world about it." And then there are referrals that are sought for. And those are referrals that your friends, family members are going to come to you for and say, "Hey, I know you went through a divorce last year. How'd you like your lawyer?" And sometimes the online reviewers aren't the same as everyone else. There's a specific type of person, as I've learned through consumer research, that will volunteer their advice through an online review. So you really need to be aware of people who are getting personal word-of-mouth referrals in addition to online reviews. And this is a really key point, too. In the legal space, people who are looking for legal solutions, which could be a lawyer, could be a DIY tool, doesn't matter. But when they're looking for a solution to their legal problem, their stakes are really, really high. Much higher than if they're looking for, say, a handyman or a restaurant, right? So when stakes are really, really high, people are likely to go to those they really trust for advice, much more so than a stranger online. They'll look at both, but they really want that security of someone they trust. Especially because, the second point is, when it comes to legal issues, most people don't have a lot of experience in dealing with them. So we've all been to restaurants. We know what we like, we know what we don't like. So when we go to an online review, we check something new out, we kind of know what we're getting into. But when it comes to lawyers or legal solutions, it's really, really much more comforting for a friend or family member to tell you what they think, because you don't really know what to expect. So, given that word-of-mouth referrals are really important, how many people would recommend you? So Jack talked earlier today about NPS, and he talked about what consumers consider lawyer NPS to be. So I'm just going to go through this again. As you know, by now hopefully, that the Net Promoter Score is a really popular metric used throughout business to measure consumer loyalty. In my line of work, I calculate NPS for a number of different companies. I work with customer loyalty across a bunch of different categories, and from tech to retail to legal. And this score is standard across the industry, not the only score for measuring loyalty, but a very popular one. And so what you do is you ask a very standardized question, always the same question. How likely is it that you'd recommend your lawyer, or Microsoft, or the Frappuccino, whatever you want to put in the blank, to a friend or colleague? And you have the respondents, or the survey participants, answer from 0 to 10, where 0 means, not a chance, not at all, and 10 is, yes, absolutely, I would recommend this product or this person. And then what you do is you, of course, we've gone through this before, lump the 9s and 10s, call them promoters, put the 7s and 8s together, call them passives, and put the rest together and call them detractors. Now I'm going to spend a little more time to talk about what this means. Promoters are people who, if someone goes to them and says, hey, what do you think about this particular attorney? They're likely to say, yeah, hire this person. They're really, really great. And they might even go on to explain why they're great. Passives might answer that same question with, well, yeah, I don't know. Pretty neutral, pretty passive. But detractors can be dangerous, because not only are they not likely to recommend you, but they are likely to talk shit about you. They're likely to say, let me tell you, that lawyer sucked. They were awful, stay away. And then you kind of set in motion a ripple effect where you're having a negative word-of-mouth advocacy going on behalf of your practice. So you want to make sure that people are not only wanting to recommend you, you don't only want to increase the proportion of promoters, but you want to make sure that the proportion of detractors among your client base is really low. So, NPS, as we talked about before, as Jack went over and George went over, excuse me, is just basically the percentage of promoters minus the percentage of detractors. So my question to you all is, so we know that the NPS for lawyers, when we ask clients, was 25. We also asked lawyers, and I actually partnered with Clio to do the survey execution and the analytics for the consumer-based study. So we asked Clio lawyers, well, what do you think your NPS is? How likely do you think, on average, your clients are to recommend you? So in your heads for a second, just guess what you think that number might be. So among the lawyers that we surveyed, they thought that they had a 47 NPS, which is much higher than what clients would say. So this gap between lawyer perception and client reality is kind of, again, being much more evident. Now, I think there's something really important to point out here with this gap, and that is that if you look at the percent who recommend, who are the promoters that lawyers think they have versus what clients are, there's really very little difference. Like statistically, there is a negligible difference. So you guys are, as a whole, pretty on point with how many of your clients are likely to say positive things about you. But what's really, really interesting is that more clients will say negative things about you than what you probably think. So while most lawyers assume, I'm not going to point you guys out, I don't know if you took the survey, but while most attorneys will think that people are either going to recommend you or just stay silent, there's a good chunk of people out there who are coming to your office who may very well be negatively affecting the growth of your practice by blocking referrals, but blocking recommendations, but even doing harm. So then what are you going to do about this? What would you do to improve your score? So George talked about the driver analysis, analytics that we did to determine what drives up NPS and can reduce the number of detractors in your business. And among the top drivers of referrals, the first was the overall cost of legal services. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold, so excuse my clearing of my throat all the time. Not much we want to do about reducing our costs. So in talking with legal consumers over the years, there's something really interesting that kind of emerges. They like to complain about how expensive lawyers are. But then when you start to ask them, well, what about a lawyer that charges $50 an hour? Would you hire that person? And they're like, no way, man, that means they probably suck. There's kind of a curb, right? There's a point at which your cost is so low that your value is perceived as low as well. So you don't necessarily want to lower your costs, not to mention, you went to law school, you kind of want to be able to bill, what you want to bill. I think it's really important to also mention that other professionals, like doctors, they have the same hourly rates, perhaps, as you do, but you have no insurance to cover for your clients the costs that they don't want to pay. So they're perceiving you as way more expensive as you probably are worth. One way to overcome this worry about cost is to be clear about overall costs. 1 in 4 consumers that we surveyed said they did not hire a lawyer because they didn't know what the overall costs would be at the outset. Now, it's really hard for some practices to predict that. If you're an immigration attorney, for instance, it's easier to set a flat rate for a lot of your services. But if you're a divorce attorney and you don't know what's going to happen, it's really, really not wise to do that. But all clients really want, in order to be more likely to recommend you, to feel more loyal to you, is to just know, just be in the loop. So if they're emailing you every day asking for an update and you know you're going to bill them for it, let them know that. Let them know that their fees are going to go up. If you are starting to sense that this divorce case is getting messy, let them know. Let them know what they're in for. Maybe they'll turn away, maybe they won't use your services, but they have a really serious legal issue, so the chances of that are pretty low. But clarity will definitely help with earning your referrals. But there's another way to think about this too, and that's to think in terms of price versus value. So Mike, how about you give me $10,000? Just hand it over. You're going to give me $10,000? No, you won't. But why not? Aren't I worth it?
I love you, but I don't think I've gotten $10,000 of value yet.
What if I told you, give me $10,000 and I'll get you a house in the Hamptons? Sure. Not even hesitating, right? You will scrounge up $10,000. You will do what it takes to get that money if you knew at the end of it you would get a house in the Hamptons. You are that house in the Hamptons. Your clients just don't always know that. So sometimes the best thing to do to offset their worry about cost or to alleviate their stress over costs of services is to let them know what they're getting for it. It's not just you're going to get paperwork filed. It's also you're going to get a peace of mind. You're going to get at the end of this, and it's going to be okay. So make sure that they don't just know the functional benefits of what you do, but what more you're going to offer them. But also, 1 in 3 clients don't hire a lawyer because the benefits don't outweigh the costs. So in the process of winning over a new client, it's just as important to be clear about the values that you're offering, the value that you're offering, not just at the end when you're hoping to seek their referral. All right. Second top driver of referrals is clarity around expectations. So I recently actually have a friend of mine had a legal issue, a legal matter, hired an attorney. At the end of the entire issue, the attorney delivered not only what my friend had wanted, but way more than my friend had expected. And looking back and talking to my friend about the ins and outs of the issue and what had happened, and having legal experience myself, I went to law school in a previous life, I knew that this lawyer did a really good job. I knew that she was a bulldog when she needed to be. I knew that she was kind and compassionate when she needed to be. But I also knew that she knew the law. I knew that she was on top of things. He just didn't know it. He didn't know what she was doing. She didn't email him with updates. She didn't tell him why she was choosing to do things the way that she was. She didn't explain why there were delays. So he never got to know it. Even at the end of the case, when he got everything he wanted, looking back, he assumed she didn't have much to do with it because she didn't tell him. So it's really important to communicate, to be very clear, and to keep them in the loop. But does this mean you have to email them every day? Does this mean you have to pull them into your office every day? Not necessarily. Although 1 in 10 clients, and who are these people, who want their lawyer to contact them every single day, about half say they want weekly contacts, and the rest would say, yeah, less frequently than that. So even if it's just once a week where you fire off a really quick update, that can save you a lot of time and energy towards the end trying to win a referral that you've kind of lost already, right? And Jack and George both brought this up earlier about preferred communication channels, and I'm just going to point out 3 that are really relevant to hitting home clarity around expectations. When it comes to learning about the legal aspects of the case, just be sure that you are explaining the law to clients in person. Not only, as Jack said, because people are scared, but the law is unclear to them most of the time. Even those who come to your office thinking they know it all because they've Googled it all, they don't really know the law. They're going to ask follow-up questions, and there's something about that face-to-face interaction where it's not only comforting, but it's much more informative. As far as getting quick questions answered, keeping them in the loop, even though most lawyers think you can do this by email, try to just pick up the phone or have an assistant or paralegal pick up the phone and say, here's a really quick answer to your question, done. And then getting status updates on the case, phone or email primarily, are the top ways of going about it. You don't just have to do phone. You can shoot off that weekly update by email. And earlier speakers also talked about accessibility. 7 out of 10 consumers or legal consumers, clients, want to be able to meet you anywhere, not just in your office. And 6 out of 10 want you to be available outside of regular business hours. So this isn't just the case of the spoiled consumer or the spoiled client. The world is headed that way. We live in an on-demand economy, and it's not just in the legal space that I've seen this trend happen. When it comes to multiple products, services, categories that I've researched across multiple, even globally, people want things now, they want it on their terms, and with technology, this is likely to reverse. So even if this means taking mornings off, so that you can, once a week, so you can be available in the evening once a week, something that you might have to consider doing. But I think it's also important to note that perfection is not required. Your clients know that you're people. They know you're human beings. They don't expect you to do everything on their terms. They just expect you to try. And I think that's one thing that's always come out in the research that I've done on clients, is that they want a lawyer that comes across as though they have energy, drive, commitment, a lawyer that's willing to work hard. If you can signal that to them, you can be imperfect, and that would be fine. Number 3, top driver of referral, personality and bedside manner. George is right. How do you change your personality, right? Well, training. I know a lot of people who are in sales, and they have their sales persona, and they have their life persona. And when you're doing sales, and a lot of times lawyers are trying to sell themselves, when you're doing client management or client services, you are on. You have a game face. So you don't have to change your personality, you just have to put on a game face. So here are some things that consumers have said they hate about the lawyer, that they would say bad things about. Hard to work with, rude and unfriendly, unreliable, not hardworking, not supportive, didn't care. I want to say a couple things about this. First of all, this doesn't really represent most lawyers that I've met and known. But there seems to be something missing in the way that clients are perceiving those really great lawyers, including, for instance, the lawyer that represented my friend, who my friend thought was not really working hard for him. In order for consumers to see your personality for what it is, you've got to send the right signals. You've got to message in the right way. If you really care about your consumer's case, if you really care about them, there are ways to signal that. Being super responsive is one way to signal that, and that's the number 4 driver, which I'm not going to talk about, but it is the number 4 driver. And super responsive doesn't need to mean in an hour. 24 hours will meet most client expectations. But do that, because that signals that you care. I've heard consumers say, I want my lawyer to have energy. Even just being lethargic in body language, as much as you might have going on up here, thinking about your client's case. Sometimes clients pick up on whether your body language is signaling that energy and that drive. So send the right signals to make sure they get who you are, because lawyers don't really all suck or anything. It's just that you're not really being seen for who you are. So, just to wrap this all up, some things to remember, some key takeaways. First of all, make sure you let them know that you're worth the price. Top driver of driving NPS is the cost of legal services. Not just being clear about it, but really illustrating the value. What are they going to get for what they're paying? What are the functional benefits and the emotional benefits they're going to get? They might get a divorce at the end of it, but what they're really going to get is a new life, a new start. They might get bankruptcy filed and have that taken care of, but then they can start all over. Make sure that you signal to them what they're getting, because once you put it in perspective, it might not seem that bad. And believe it or not, if you can signal being a top-rate lawyer, people will pay for you, even if they're complaining about it. And they will refer you, even though they're complaining about it. Secondly, try to communicate weekly. Opt for phone if you can. No, it's kind of a drag, but it really will go a long way in earning those referrals and growing your practice. Try to get used to, comfortable with the idea that people want you available wherever and whenever, sort of the way they want to be able to tap an app and get a ride somewhere, or the way they want to just tap an app and have laundry detergent delivered to their home. They want that kind of service in every aspect of their lives. People who are hiring you are not going to act differently Just because they're having a legal situation, they're still going to be the people they are. And they're going to see you in the context of this on-demand world we live in. And fourth, just be cool. Be nice. Be easy to work with. There's no reason to be agitated. There's no reason, well, I take that back. There's plenty of reason to be agitated. But signal the opposite of that. Do it for the sake of your business. Do it for the sake of growth. This is basic client management. It's customer service. Companies do this all the time. They suck it up, they put on a face, they put on their game face, and they grow. They grow their business. And finally, regularly signal and message. This is also client management. If you sense that your client isn't happy, isn't really getting your personality, isn't really getting that you're working hard for them, think about ways that you can send that message across. Maybe send updates a little bit more frequently than normal. Maybe just look them in the eye and say, you know, I really care about what you're going through. But I also want to make sure that you all come away with this real thing, that perception is reality. I think we all know this. We all see this in life. What consumers, what clients think is real is often what they believe is real. So if they perceive that you're expensive, whether you are or not. If they perceive you don't give a crap, then you don't give a crap, whether you do or not. So be very sensitive to how they're seeing you. And this really ties back to Jack's message earlier today, this intensely consumer-centric approach to practicing law and being very aware of what your consumers are thinking and feeling so that you can really serve them, so you can really grow your practice. Thanks.